I'm Mike Golic.
I'm Jessica Smetana.
Welcome to yet another edition, our 1 millionth edition of Golic and Smetty, by the way. It's incredible how time flies. I'm Mike Golic Sr.
Time does fly.
She is Jess Smetana. Jess, a million episodes. You haven't aged a bit. You look great.
You have. That's something I can't. I'm just kidding.
Again,
I know, we
right
started
out
off on the wrong foot. We started
right
off on
out
the
of the
wrong
gate.
foot.
What does
Let's
your
start
father
over.
say about this? What does your father say when he
Who
listens?
cares?
And what do you mean, who cares? He's your father.
Please, Mike.
And he's a friend of mine.
Oh my God, you just made his day. When he listens to this, he's going to cry.
You are so mean to the elderly. Wow. Have you always been this way?
Yeah.
Man, how you doing? What's going on?
I'm good. Actually, it's funny you say that because someone tweeted at me the other day that there's a mascot sidekick opening for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike, do you know the Steelers mascot's name by chance?
No, I can't even pronounce their new stadium, let alone know the name of the mascot.
Acrisure.
Acrisure?
The Steelers mascot's name is Steely McBeam.
Seriously?
I'm serious. He's kind of a creepy adult man with a big square jaw. And apparently they're hiring like a sidekick to go run around with Steely McBeam. And the job requirements sound perfect for me. It's like enthusiastic, loves the Steelers, fan engagement, all of that. But one of the requirements is like you have to be able to interact with fans of all ages. And you mentioned that, you think I hate elderly people. That's not the case. I think I'd be a great mascot sidekick if I went into retirement homes and assisted living homes and things like that. I love talking to old people. It's the kids where I think I would fail as the Steely McBeam sidekick because they're too loud.
See, I feel you'd have the mask on, so you would, while you would openly be nice to the elderly, you'd be ripping them behind the mask.
I don't know if the sidekick has a mask. I didn't get far enough into I haven't applied yet. We'll put it that way. But maybe if I do, I'll find out if there's a costume or not, or if I'm just like a live action sidekick.
I'm not gonna lie. I am this many days old when I know that the mascot was named Steely McBeam.
It's a great name. It's hilarious because obviously Pittsburgh is a steel town. So what are you going to name your Steelers mascot? The Steelers aren't, really like a known thing. It's kind of like the Packers. Like, what do you name the mascot? So they named it Steely McBeam.
That's a good point. It's like
Bodie McBoatface.
We're going to get into the NBA and WNBA here in a second, but because you mentioned the Steelers, we're going to talk some NFL rule changes later. Let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
What did you think of your former Hall of Fame quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, admitting publicly, and he knew it. He said, I'm going to get blasted for this.
Yeah.
But he said, I was kind of hoping Kenny Pickett wouldn't do well, to make me look, boy, they really miss me because the guy they took in the first round isn't doing as well. What did you think of him publicly saying that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So he said it on his podcast, I guess. I'll give him credit for being honest because that's probably what a lot of retired quarterbacks think about the players that replace them because, I don't know, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but like the competitiveness with the other people in your position group probably, especially at the quarterback position, is something that follows you until maybe you die. You never really get over that. Although I guess you said once you quit football, you were done competing in sports and you didn't care anymore. But it's probably something that other retired quarterbacks have thought. It is interesting he said it because it is incredibly wow, that's pretty awful
petty.
To say.
Yeah, it's petty.
It's very petty because he was not a very good quarterback at the end of his career. So to not be able to mentally move on and be like, I'm happy for the guy. He's, Kenny Pickett's a young, I guess he was 23 or 24 when he was drafted, but he's still a young quarterback kind of taking over the reins. But it's probably not an uncommon feeling, right? I can't imagine it would be.
Jess, I am going to tell you, depending on situation, this is more prevalent than not.
Yeah.
Listen, and it could go as far as, I hold the record at Notre Dame wrestling for the fastest pin, 13 seconds. Now, wrestling was dropped here. They don't have it anymore. But if they did, and I hope it comes back to Notre Dame, I'll say it publicly. I don't want anybody to break my record. I want to hold that record. Now, if somebody breaks that record, I would like to be the first to shake their hand and say, good job. But how many times over the years I've had people come on air who've had a record and say, oh, records are made to be broken. Only a couple did they actually say, I don't want it to be broken, and I don't blame you. And let me ask you this. If you were in a golf tournament coming to the end where winning and money was on the line, and you're standing on the edge of the green, you've putted out, and there's a guy or a girl putting a 5-footer, if they miss it, you win. You can't tell me in your mind you're not hoping they miss that thing. I keep hearing, golf is a respectable sport. You don't wish bad on others. Bullshit. You want that guy or that girl to miss that putt so you win.
Well, yeah, but in this case, like, I don't think there's anything Roethlisberger wins or loses from Kenny Pickett. Like, if Kenny Pickett ends up breaking Big Ben's records in Pittsburgh, that would probably be really surprising. Like, that's not to say he might not be the franchise quarterback there, but Roethlisberger was there for such a long time and played in so many games and won multiple Super Bowls. You know, like, it just surprises me whenever I hear someone who has been very successful at their position still have like petty hard feelings, because like the chances of Pittsburgh having 2 back-to-back 18 season quarterbacks in this league in this time period and being as accomplished, you know, as each other, like that's probably pretty unlikely, right? Like it doesn't happen, let alone back-to-back. So that's where I'm like, why can't you just be happy for the guy? But again, I don't listen to his podcast. I'm not a huge like fan of whatever he's doing there. Like, just I'm ready for the new era in Pittsburgh. So I'm happy for Kenny Pickett, and I hope that he is a successful quarterback.
Listen,
there.
It's petty as hell, Jess. There's no doubt about it. My point is, and all situations are different, that if you're sitting there in training camp in competition with another player, you can't control how he plays, but you hope he plays bad. You know, I mean, there's more than that out there than meets the eye. And with Ben, is it petty? Yes. And he even admitted, as I said, he said, I'm going to get blasted for this. But I'm just telling you, in different situations, more often than not, there is in the mind wishing there's failure to a person either
100%.
at my position,
Mike,
or
I agree with you. I wish ill on people I'm playing pickleball against all the time. I'm just saying, when you're an elite athlete, that's when I find it hard to understand, like, still being petty about, like, a rookie in the league, right? Like, if it's me against someone like me and neither of us are professional athletes and it doesn't really matter, like, I want to win, obviously. But you just have these images of these ultra competitive people in your mind that, like, but, like, why does LeBron James care about who the next guy is in the league? He's freaking LeBron James. Like, there's so few questions about his legacy. And Ben Roethlisberger is not LeBron James. But, you know, in Pittsburgh, he is. So that's when I'm like, you know, you kind of expect to see someone be, quote-unquote, the bigger person. But I agree with you. It's probably way more common than you think.
Well, you mentioned LeBron. Let's get to that. And we'll get into it in a bit after we talk about the winners. LeBron lobbing that grenade in his post-game presser about his future. But let's give credit to Denver. You know, Denver beats LA 113-111. They sweep that series. And the stat to go along with it, 46 seasons Denver's been around, the most before a finals appearance, and 94 playoff wins, the most without a finals berth. So they finally get to the finals. They have the best team. I don't care. And it's going to be Miami coming out of the East. They're a better team than Miami. Just, you know, if you're a Denver fan, don't tell Jimmy Butler that, or he'll use it to beat you guys senseless, because that's what he does, and he does it really well. But, I mean, Jess, this was a game where, and two different ones, like the series with Boston and Miami. Boston is so underachieving while just about getting ready to get swept. Where LA, these were competitive games. They just went against a better team in Denver. These were all single-digit games except for one. There was an 11-point game. The rest were single-digit games. The rest had big leads that were taken away. The Lakers had a 15-point lead at halftime in this one, but by 4 minutes and 39 seconds of the third quarter, that lead was gone. And it got competitive through the rest of the way. Certainly at the end, two of the big things there, the last couple of shots by Jokic, he made his, and the last couple of shots by LeBron, even though he had 40 points and set a record for oldest player to score 40 points in the playoffs, he missed his last couple of shots, that fadeaway baseline. And then at the end, where you got to give Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon credit on the defensive side for stopping LeBron with 4 seconds to go.
And I give you credit for being on the West Coast and staying up to watch the end of these games, because I haven't stayed awake for a single 8:30 tip-off this entire conference finals. But I think there has been a lot of hand-wringing about, like, Denver and Miami is like the worst NBA finals matchup. We could have had Boston and LA. And I find that to be so annoying because, A, why does anyone care about NBA finals ratings? Like, why would an average fan care about that? And B, I think people just want to watch really good basketball, and I think the Denver and Miami storylines are just as good.
Yep.
Like, you keep hearing about all the, quote unquote, well, not quote unquote, they are undrafted players in Miami, even though they're veterans, they're not rookies, and the disrespect for that team and the roster construction. And then, Jokic hasn't won a finals yet. Like, all the stats you just gave about Denver not being able to compete for a finals championship yet. And I'm really excited for if there isn't a miracle and the Celtics do not come back and win 4 in a row. I think it's a really great matchup, and I'm excited to watch it.
I agree. We'll have to see, as a taping of this, we're going into game 4 for Miami, and Boston is down in Miami, to see if they can pull off the sweep. And to me, Jess, the Celtics are in a no-win situation, first and foremost because they're not going to win the series. But even in Game 4, because if they win it, if they win it, everyone's going to say, well, where the hell was that effort when you were down 2-zip when you could have still stayed in this series? Winning when you're down 3-zip doesn't mean squat, because nobody's ever coming back 0-3. So why now? And if you lose, then obviously you got swept, and you're going to deal with the ridicule of that. Of being swept by an 8 seed. So they're really in a no-win situation. That one's a matter of when, not if, that series is over. And then the finals is going to start on June 1st, and Game 7, if necessary, will be on June 18th. But give Denver credit. Jokic, I mean, Jess, this guy, whenever you can say, he now has 8 postseason triple-doubles this postseason in 15 games. So over half the games he's had a triple-double. He's averaged a triple-double in this series and the Phoenix series. But his 8 postseason triple-doubles breaks Wilt Chamberlain's record of 7 in one postseason. When you're breaking Wilt Chamberlain's records, I mean, that's all-time stuff. And Mike Malone, it seems at least once a presser goes off on everybody for not giving the Joker his due, right? He just seems so offended by it.
I mean, Spoelstra's the same way with his team, right? Like, every time someone mentions the fact that he's got undrafted players on the roster, he's like, really? Like, are we still doing this? I think both of these teams have all of the sports cliche chips on their shoulder, metaphors, whatever you want to call it. Because no one had, I mean, I think maybe, yes, some analysts did have Denver making it this far, but no one had the heat after the season they had in the NBA Finals, especially going up against the Bucks in the first round. Like, it was just not something anyone had on the radar, and yet you have now comparisons between Jimmy Butler and Michael Jordan in the playoffs in the way that he's played in this postseason. So, I think both teams really have something to prove. Obviously, who doesn't? I think you could say that about Boston and LA too if they had made it, but this is certainly the one of the least expected matchups that anyone thought they'd see coming up. I also think that it's so. Every year, I'm just amazed at how long the finals schedule is. It lasts like 3 weeks, especially when the conference finals wrap up in like 4 or 5 games. You've now got a break for like a week before the next game. It's so bizarre to me. I know that they do it because of all the media and scheduling and television schedules and everything like that. But it is so funny because we are essentially, Mike, like your golf outing now is in like a month. The NBA Finals will have just ended. Yes. And that feels like it's so far away from now.
It really does. And I do try and position the golf tournament to be after NBA season. So if I want to get basketball-related people, after mini camps and before training camps to get football people.
It's good timing.
I try for the good timing there. And then the other part of this, as Denver is going to go on and be favored in the finals against Miami, which is to the delight of Jimmy Butler. The LeBron in his post-game presser lobs out the bomb of, I have to think about, my future, and basically talking then to Dave McMenamin afterward off camera about, I have to think about if I want to play. Because remember, he had the plan of playing with his son, Bronny, who was going to USC, and he has to be out of high school at least that year before the draft. So it would be at least 2 years before he would be in the NBA if, in fact, he goes that route or is a one and done guy in college. LeBron is under contract next year for $46 million, and then the year after is a player option, which coincides with maybe his son being drafted if the son is a one and done at $50 million. So, Jess, I have always said this, and I will continue to say this. I will never, ever believe now, could he retire? Well, he's 38 years old, been playing for 20 years. His body, he's still playing great, but, his body is certainly getting beat up. But I've said this for a couple of decades of doing shows now. I will never take an athlete's by their word when a season just ends. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is too much mental and physical fatigue when you just finish your season, not to give it a little bit of time to take a breath physically, to take a breath mentally, to give it a month or so to decide, okay, am I going to go through another off season of the grueling work it takes to play in the NBA or whatever sport? I just don't believe in believing somebody who says it right after the season's over.
I don't believe it, period, anymore, because we've had so many unretirements the last, I don't know, however long, since Brett Favre did it, like, over a decade ago. I just don't believe anyone. I'll believe it when I see it. Like you said, he's talked extensively about how he wants to either play with Bronny or against Bronny. He's also said he wants to do what's best for Bronny, and it doesn't. He's kind of like walked back some of those comments a little bit, because I think, he's been like, okay, my son is going to be an adult and do his own thing maybe, so I shouldn't be so adamant about it. But we all know that that's a goal of his, and it's a really admirable goal, and he's very close to attaining it. So I don't necessarily believe whatever his comments are because of that. But I just don't believe anyone when they say they're going to retire, because I think fake retirement or retirement hints are a great way to get back at the Nuggets after they beat you in the conference finals, because now everyone's just talking about LeBron for the rest of the week, and no one's talking about Jokic.
Yeah, who else nobody's talking about either is Carmelo Anthony. Just said he's retiring, and now LeBron upped that one as well.
Oh,
so,
poor Melo. You're right.
I know.
He got like half of a day.
I have to say, this is reminiscent of my retirement, Jess. When I retired, the same day I retired, when I did not have a press conference, I did not make a statement, only my family knew, I was still upstaged by Joe Montana, retired the same day I retired. It even made my family talk more about Joe than about me. That's how bad it was.
Oh, man. So you have a chip on your shoulder, too.
Yeah, I do.
It.
Quarterbacks, damn quarterbacks. All right, before we move on, we have golf to talk about. We have NFL rule changes to talk about as well. F1, will they ever race again after a cancellation? Quickly, Jess, on the WNBA, a couple of games have started. The big news is Brittney Griner back and playing again, though the team not doing too well. Early, I have a question for you about WNBA, but just your early thoughts on the teams. Just like I said, just a couple of games in.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a really fun kickoff or tip-off weekend. There were a lot of really good games. I know that this is now being dubbed the SuperTeam Era in the WNBA, because you have really stacked rosters in Las Vegas and in New York. But I thought that the Mystics looked really good against New York on opening night, and I thought there were a number of teams, the Chicago Sky against the Mercury on Sunday, that surprised people with how they played. So I'm really excited. I think there's there's so many storylines to look forward to this season, because as we've seen over the last few years, more and more people are watching, and more players are becoming household names, and it's just lending itself to more intrigue and excitement and people wanting to see who's doing what. And I think you mentioned Brittney Griner. I mean, that was obviously the big story of the weekend. It was her first game back, and after she came back from Russia, where she was wrongfully imprisoned for having a vape cartridge there, people wondered if she'd ever play again, and she was like, yeah, I'm gonna play again, and I'm gonna play really well. She had a double. She had 4 blocks at her first home game back. I mean, they did a whole intro thing for her that was super emotional, and she still played great after that, which I can imagine that would be incredibly intense to have to your first game back, your wife's at the game, all the fans are cheering for you, they play this thing for you, and you're coming out onto the court, and then you got to play 2 seconds later she's winning the tip off. So I was really impressed with that, and it was really cool to see. Honestly, it was just a great weekend. I thought the WNBA put on a great show.
So we're starting. That just starts. We saw some preseason games in Toronto selling out, and they're talking about the possibility of expansion. And that brings you to my question again, Jess. Of if and when that may happen, because we saw it again. Wasn't it the Wings, Dallas Wings, where they cut a first rounder from 2021 and they cut this year's 11th pick overall, I believe it was. I mean, it's getting crazy what they're doing.
Every team has had to make roster decisions like this because the rosters are really small. There's not as many teams as the NBA. So the rosters are extremely competitive, and there's entire teams of really, really talented players not on rosters right now. And so there's a couple big dates looming, 2025 being the big one. That's when the players will be able to start renegotiating the next CBA. And if they want to expand roster size, like that's something that could come up then. That's also going to be when the ESPN WNBA rights package is up. Right now, ESPN's getting all the games that they have for a bargain. There's also, questions about revenue share. The WNBA players don't get nearly as much of a revenue share as NBA players get in their salaries. So that's going to be a big issue coming up. But expansion is the big one. That's what the WNBA commissioner has been talking about a lot this offseason. Whether or not the team will end up in Toronto or somewhere else, they've compiled a list of a bunch of cities where they might add a team where they've decided that they've seen a lot of fan interest. So the Toronto preseason game getting sold out was a big deal because that looks like a really likely spot. But yeah, expanding the league is one really, positive step for being able to have more of these excellent college players be able to keep playing because there's just not enough spots for them. There's too many good players, essentially not enough space. But I think there's also a question of like, if you expand the league, like the players need to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need also without, taking those resources away to like build up a new team. Like there needs to be a bigger conversation about how, the pie is sliced when we're having these conversations because there is still a big discrepancy between what the revenues are and what the percentage of that the players are earning. So
yeah, the expansion, Toronto's being talked about, Nashville, San Francisco, all cities being talked about. We'll see where that goes. Again, that season just starting. The NBA, we have Denver. Congrats to them in the finals after their sweep of the Lakers. And we'll see when Miami takes care of Boston to see that Denver-Miami matchup in the NBA finals starting June 1st. Coming up next, we have LeBron James making us not talk about the winner in Nikola Jokic and Denver. And we have Michael Block in the PGA making us not talk about Brooks Koepka, who just won another major. We'll explain next. All right, Jess, so as we mentioned, Denver moves on. Miami will move on once they take care of the Celtics. We just had another major in golf, the PGA Championship in Rochester at Oak Hill. And Brooks Koepka, in some bad weather, ends up, sustaining through that and winning. And it's amazing. And I don't know how much of this is he's with the Live Golf Tour now, and they're talked about less, just like everybody kind of not lost their minds. We're questioning why when Phil Mickelson played so good at the Masters, when he finished his fourth round, nobody, CBS didn't interview him. Was it because he's with Live? So Brooks wins here, plays well in doing so, but everybody, and I get it, the reason you're talking about Michael Block, if anybody doesn't know, he's a club pro, and they invite X amount of club pros in the PGA. It's been whittled down over the years. And after Friday, he was tied for 10th. Saturday, everybody expected him to fade. He was tied for 8th after Saturday. And then Sunday, he hits that hole-in-one on 15 where he just dunks it, and he's playing with Rory McIlroy, who, when he was told he was playing with Rory, I thought he was going to break into tears yet again, like he did multiple times over the weekend. But then, Jess, he gets that up and down on 18, a difficult up and down, where he's tied for 15th, and that gets him into the PGA Championship next year. He's playing this week in a tournament on a sponsor exemption. So what a weekend for a guy that I'm not kidding you. I think he cried 4 or 5 times with all the times he was interviewed, talking about just what a magical weekend it was for him, while Brooks Koepka's feeling like Shooter McGavin, and Happy Gilmore when he's asked about, after he wins a tournament, what'd you think about Happy? I don't know. I was too busy winning, and Brooks Koepka wins, but everybody's talking about Michael Block.
Yeah, it was funny because I wasn't watching that much of golf this weekend because I was watching a lot of WNBA games, and This was another big sports weekend, so I was like, you know what, if there's one thing I have to sacrifice, I'll not tune into the PGA Championship. But I kept seeing tweets about Michael Block, and I was like, wow, it appears as though a club pro is currently winning the championship. And it wasn't until like Sunday afternoon that I was like, oh no, he came in 15th, which is still an incredible story. But I didn't even know who won until after the fact, because I had only been seeing stories about this guy, which goes to show how kind of cool and improbable the situation is. But you're right, because about him being so emotional, because I heard him say after the round on Sunday, he cried more in the last 3 days than he's ever cried in his entire life, which is very funny to think about. Like, golf is not the type of sport that you often think about with emotions getting to that level, because you have to stay so cool and calm and collected to be able to finish a round and be in the right headspace. But he was just kind of a mess the whole weekend. Absolutely just breaking down. Every time he talked about it, he was thanking everyone, crying. So yeah, it was a good story. And yeah, Brooks Koepka winning. He's a good golfer, man. Like, he's won what, 5 majors, 6 majors now, 5 majors.
5, yep.
He's still super young, early 30s. He's had some injury issues. He obviously, if you watched Full Swing, didn't seem like he was in a good place mentally when they filmed it last year, but he's had a really good year now at the 2 majors that he's been able to play in. Almost won the Masters and now winning the PGA Championship. He's never won the Open, which is later this summer, and I don't think he's won a U.S. Open either. So
no, I don't believe
he still
so.
has those empty spots on his trophy cabinet that we saw during Full Swing. He won the PGA Championship. He's playing great golf. What can you say?
It's interesting, and he even kind of intimated that if he was playing this well, like you said, Masters right there at the end, and then obviously winning this. If he was playing this well, he basically kind of intimated that he doesn't think he would have gone to live golf. You saw it just like I saw it in Full Swing, the Netflix docuseries, that he was basically, he came out and said, I can't compete with the best players in golf right now. My game is not good enough. So it seems like that was one of the reasons he went to live. The main reason everybody went was the payday. We know that. And to try and say anything different is ridiculous. They got paid a lot of money, and it was just, he didn't feel he was playing as good a golf to compete with the top guys, so he went over to live. And everybody went to live for a different reason, right? Older guys who were some names but really weren't competitive anymore, they took the big money grab. Guys like Brooks that didn't think his game was good enough, so he grabbed the money. And then young players who weren't making a dent in the PGA Tour could get easier money at live, so they jumped over to that. So we know some of the reasons, but Brooks kind of said, maybe I wouldn't have gone if I was playing this well. But it does bring up another interesting point, Jess. We have the Ryder Cup, which I love. Golf is obviously an individual sport. And then we get to the Ryder Cup, where it's a team sport. And it is so much fun to root against the Europeans and for our team. But what's interesting, Zach Johnson is going to be the captain of the Ryder Cup. Right now, Brooks Koepka, they take 6 automatic qualifiers. He has enough points as the second qualifier right now, so he would go. The question's going to be, the captain makes 7 other selections, because there's 13 total players, Jess, will Zach Johnson take other live golfers who aren't in the automatic 6? If they're not in that, where is that line going to be of, because there's still some animosity there, not as much as last year, and eventually I think they'll work things out. But is Zach Johnson going to maybe sacrifice not taking the best golfer because that person might be from live?
Right, and I think it's in Rome this year. Is that right? The Ryder Cup later this fall.
How great was that?
I know, right? It's interesting. I mean, one of the things that I keep thinking about, because I've seen reports that like PGA Tour viewership is up, and both of the majors that we've watched and talked about have had good viewership numbers and had great storylines. But like, it just seems to me that like, in comparison with live, which we've already talked about, like the ethical and moral complications of on previous episodes, their viewership is so bad that they are no longer going to be talking about what their viewership is. Right. And it seems like all of the animosity and the storylines coming from that has only bolstered the PGA Tour's interest for fans in the States. And I don't know if that's something easily quantifiable, but maybe it's just the fact that we're talking about golf now, because there is this, for lack of a better term, drama is just really like this. PGA Tour has said, okay, you're right. Like, we need to pay guys more. We need to have a different type of schedule that's more accommodating. We will make changes. And it seems like it's working because even though Brooks won and he is a live tour golfer, I still think that this ends up being a good thing for the PGA Tour. People are interested in golf, and the PGA Tour is on NBC, CBS, and Golf Channel. You don't have to look for it to find it. And if people are interested in golf, they're just going to watch it.
I 100% agree with you. Already the live experience has helped the purses go up in the PGA. We have seen that. I thought it was interesting. Zach Johnson at the PGA, at the presser there, was just getting peppered with questions about taking live players, and he was trying to deflect everything, but the questions just kept coming. And one of them, this was great, one of them was like, hey, are you going to go to any live events to scout players? And Zach's like, well, I'm kind of still playing on the PGA Tour some, so I can't really. And they're like, well, they're on the CW. You can watch them there. And he's like, oh, yeah, is that what they're on? He's like, yeah, I think we have that channel. My kid watches his shows on that channel. I'm like, oh, man, what a dig he just gave to live there. So we'll see where that goes, but congrats to Brooks Koepka. A quick couple moments, Jess, on NHL. Listen, we love all sports, you and I, but there is nothing, and I think you would agree, like playoff overtime hockey. Mm-hmm. And in the first 4 games of both conference finals, you had overtime hockey. So much so that the first 2 for Florida, your team down there in Miami, they're playing Carolina. They're up 3-0. But in the first 2 games, 2 overtime games, the first one was a 4 overtime game, the second one a 1 overtime game, and Matthew Tkachuk had the goal in both overtimes. That's why I feel old, because his dad, Keith, got into the league in 92 while I was still playing in the NFL. So, again, I felt really old. I know, Jess, I am really old. But that these guys that I played in the same era with their kids are now star players on teams.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like how your kid is a star player on the DraftKings team. And
wow, look at that.
You get to host a podcast with him.
Well done. So Florida's up 3-0 on that one. And as I said, the first 4 games, the 2 games in East and 2 in West, were all overtime. But one team won them all or in each conference. Like Las Vegas is up 2-0 on Dallas, and now
it's a lot like the NBA conference.
Exactly.
Conference.
How about Miami though? I mean, you're down there. I mean, is there buzz, Jess? I mean, you got
there's
two
so
Miami.
much buzz.
Yeah,
it's crazy because like we always like to talk about Miami as a sports town being a little fair weather at times, but. Yep. Yeah, I'm both. It's weird because the Panthers play so far away from Miami that I haven't been to a game yet. I mean, it's a hike. Like, it is very far from where I live. But, the Heat play across the street from our studio at the Levitard show. So, yeah, with combined both teams right now doing so well, we could have an epic June in South Florida. And if you think I am going to pretend like I'm not a fan to get on one of those parade floats, you are wrong. Because I will be first in line. And I will be drinking Natty Light out of the Stanley Cup.
That's what I'm talking about. Drinking beer out of the Stanley Cup has got to be one of the greatest things. So
I've done
we'll see it. Yeah, we'll see if that happens down there as the playoffs continue coming up. Though we go to the NFL where there never really is an offseason. Bunch of rule changes have come through, or at least a few. And I will give everybody a trivia question that you can take to your local bar or work or wherever, and I guarantee you will make money on it. That's coming up.
Mike, the Philadelphia Inquirer had a headline this week that said, the Eagles beat the 49ers so hard, the NFL had to change the rules. And they kind of have a point. So we talked about this after the NFC Championship game, but there was a CBA thing where you couldn't add a third quarterback to the roster, counted against a roster spot. So the NFL has decided, there was a vote, the owners changed it. Now you can have a third quarterback on your roster so that, if you're Brock Purdy and you injure your elbow, you don't have to come back in the game and take snaps to prevent your star running back from having to become the quarterback. So I think this is a positive thing, but what do you think?
Oh, listen, they had this rule. This was in the NFL, actually, just while I was still playing. From 91 to 2010, you could dress an emergency quarterback without accounting against the roster. And then what they did in the 2011 CBA is they expanded the roster. They said, well, instead of just doing this, we'll just expand the roster and you can dress 3 quarterbacks. So they've expanded the roster, but then teams started going back to just 2 quarterbacks so they could have another person at a position they were low at or on special teams or whatever. And now they've run into the problem again if 2 quarterbacks aren't enough. So they revisited it, as you said, in the spring owners meetings, and now they're going back to what it was, is a 46-man roster, and then you can dress that third quarterback, and that third quarterback can only go in if the first 2 can't go back in and play. Like if one of them is injured and then is back and ready to play, the emergency quarterback has to come out of the game. That the only way he can go in if the other 2 are incapacitated and can't go back in the game. So I think that's a good rule. But like I said, that rule was already here.
Right.
And then it changed to just an expanded roster. So now it's back again. So I do think that's a good thing. And listen, it's certainly not the first time. It won't be the last time something happened and then a rule change. A couple of years ago, remember the playoffs? Kansas City and Buffalo went to overtime, and Kansas City got the ball, went down and scored, and Josh Allen never got on the field. What did we do? Well, we changed the overtime rules in the playoffs so that both teams get a possession, so that will never happen again. So I can see how a season or something happening can affect a rule change.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those rare things where it's like entertainment thing that also happens to fill the box of player safety, because you don't want someone who's hurt to go back into the game and have to play. But it also isn't fun to watch when a team just doesn't have a quarterback because both of their quarterbacks have gotten injured. So I think it's a good change. I think that, it's probably done because of the entertainment factor. Like the NFC Championship would have been a better game. I think the Eagles still would have won it if they had a third string quarterback. Cause I don't even know who that third string quarterback on the 49ers would have been, but
at least it would have been a quarterback.
At least it would have been a quarterback. Exactly. At least it wouldn't have been someone with a UCL tear trying to take snaps and hand the ball off, and possibly injure themselves more. So yeah, it worked out. There was another thing though that I think I have very mixed feelings about, which is the Thursday night flex scheduling, because this is something that players have always said they don't love playing on Thursday night because it's a short week, and if you're playing Sunday and then I guess they wouldn't find out that week that they're being flexed into the Thursday. It happens more ahead of time than that.
It has to be 28 days in advance. So it could be a long time. And Jess, you can miss me with the players being bummed about Thursday.
You're over it.
They're fine. I remember playing on Thanksgiving. Nobody gave a damn about my health then. I played on a Thursday a couple of times. Never heard, oh my God, they can't do it. So now every team plays. Normally, every team will play on at least one Thursday. Now, there are teams you could play on 2 Thursdays, but we've seen it before where they played one Thursday, then another Thursday, so they still had that week. Now, if 2 teams play on a Thursday and get the short rest each time, then I'll start to have another conversation with you. But Thursday games, listen, part of the complaining is for CBA as well. I get it, as far as player safety and trying to get more out of it by saying, okay, more Thursday games, give us something on the other end. But I have not been on that argument the whole time. I think the players will be fine. After a Thursday game, you got 10 days before your next game. I know it's a short week. You never put pads on. I get it. But if you do it once during the season, I don't have a problem with it. And it's just another situation where money talks, right? This isn't only a football thing. This is a outside of sports life thing. Money talks. Money talks more than the players playing on a Thursday that are concerned about their safety. Money talks more than the fan who has that Thursday night ticket that all of a sudden becomes worthless because that game is going to get flexed, and that ticket's, you're going to have to make different plans if you want to go to the game on Sunday. So players and fans, just like employees of companies outside of sports, get screwed for the sake of money. This happens all the time.
You are right about that.
Yeah.
Look, and you're right. However, as a fan, I hate when my team plays on Thursday night. I don't like the short week. I don't like coming home from work and watching a game. I want to watch all of the games that the Steelers play on a Sunday, maybe occasionally a Monday. I don't want to watch it after I've been at work all day and I've just woken up from a nap, and now all of a sudden my heart rate is like 85 beats per minute sitting down. I would like to reserve that for Sundays and Saturdays because of college football. That's just my own perspective. And I also like knowing the schedule ahead of time and being able to temper my expectations, because I know that, the Steelers are playing a Thursday night game in Cleveland. Like, okay, well, if it were a Sunday game, I'd be pretty confident that they're going to win that one. But if it's a Thursday now, anything can happen. Someone might get hurt. I hate it. I'd rather them just play all their games on Sunday. But you're right, money talks. It's fine.
And different sports, different ways. Listen, like in the NBA is when the player doesn't play a back-to-back and people have tickets, and all of a sudden, that second game, 2 stars aren't playing and you're holding tickets to that game and the fan gets screwed again. But as I said, that happens inside and outside of sports where somebody is getting screwed for the sake of money. Why do we think they did this? Amazon is paying a boatload of money to the NFL, and they got a bunch of garbage games last year. Now they want the ability in weeks 13 to 17 to have a better game, basically saying, if we're going to pay you all this friggin' money, we want better games. And the NFL and the owners especially are going to say, no problem, because we want more of your money down the road. So that's what they're going to do. And then you have the side of Tom Brady becoming an owner. This is what we're getting now, Jess, with these high-profile, rich ball players in all the sports. They're into buying into teams, not coaching anymore. You certainly get some players like that where at my level would be coaches. But these high-profile guys, they're buying soccer teams. Brady owns part of the Aces in the WNBA in Vegas, and now the Raiders as well. That was finalized. It was agreed to by 24 of the 32 owners, and that's how many you need in the vote. So Tom Brady, a former player, is now a part owner of an NFL team.
It's crazy. I mean, it's a great investment, though, if you're rich, right? Because the valuation only goes up and up and up. Commanders just sold for, I think, $6 billion, which set a record. The Broncos got sold last year to the Walton family for what was then a record amount. So, yeah, it's a sound investment if you have the money for it. So it makes a lot of sense.
I don't know. Again, I don't know how much money he's putting in. Again, these are billionaires that we're dealing with. Tom Brady is not a billionaire. So I don't know the amount of money that goes in, but it's a nice face of the program as well. Though you think of a face of Tom Brady, it would be more for the Patriots, not the Raiders.
And there was also the Dolphins thing that happened that they were saying they were going to give him Dolphins ownership after he became the quarterback there, and then the whole thing blew up, and Stephen Ross got suspended, and they lost a draft pick. So yeah, I mean, he was always been rumored as being someone who was interested in becoming a player owner. Like we saw Michael Jordan do it with the Hornets, right? So
and I think you'll see it more and more. Like we're seeing it with some other sports guys into soccer teams as well, or the stars. Like Ryan Reynolds and others. You see Snoop is trying to get on and buy in the Ottawa Senators. So you see it more and more. But here's where I'm going to help everybody out. All right, Jess? Everybody, I'm helping everybody out here. Use this at work. Use this at a bar or somewhere, and you'll win money.
Okay. And
the question will be, Tom Brady became the 3rd former NFL player to become at least part owner of an NFL team. Can you name the other 2? Yeah. This is something. This is a hard question.
Does Dan Marino own any of the Dolphins?
No. He's like a special assistant or whatever. Okay. He's loving his job, by the way. I ran into him during a game I was calling this year. He had just come from golfing. Yeah, he's living life. So, no, it is back in the day. One, I'll give you a hint. One was a owner of a team who basically got ousted, ended up selling the team and making a boatload of money, but he was, he had done some bad things were going on in his organization, and he ended up selling it to get out of it. Obviously not Dan Snyder, who just
John
did that.
Elway?
No. John was not a part owner.
He was not a part owner.
That's what I mean. This is hard.
Jerry
Richardson. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Jerry Richardson. And then the other one is going way, way back. It's a name everybody knows, but did you know that he played in the league? It would be one George Halas.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know he played in the league, but yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
So there you go.
Halas
three
Hall.
former players, NFL players that became owners or part owners. Tom Brady, Jerry Richardson, George Halas. So there you go.
It seems like if the trivia question were former players that work in front offices, I would have nailed it because I thought of 20 instantly.
Yeah, exactly.
And just was guessing that maybe they had an ownership stake, but I was
wrong. How about that? So go ahead, everybody, go win some money on that one.
Jerry Richardson, I never would have.
Yep, exactly right. You're welcome. I just won 10% off the top. Coming up, Jess is going to explain why the hell we haven't seen an F1 race in a year and a half. All right, Jess. I now listen. I understand why the F1 race. It was in Italy. It was supposed to be in Italy. Was canceled. They had horrible rains, and I mean the safety of everybody is paramount outside of the sport, let alone inside the sport. So that was canceled. We had a race canceled earlier in the season as well. It just seems to be a hit or miss, and I know it's not. But when I look forward every Sunday to watch a race, and they're not going on. But this one, obviously very legitimate on why they canceled it. There's no other way with what was going on with all the mudslides and everything. They were going to try and get a race in Italy.
I mean, it has to be a big deal for them to outright cancel it without even trying to, because then the chances that they'll be able to reschedule this race in Imola is very slim because of how backloaded the F1 calendar is. But to not be able to recoup any of the tickets or fan experiences or anything like that, it's a big deal. So F1 and a bunch of the F1 teams are raising money right now for the region. So if you're inclined to donate anything, check out their social pages. You'll see links for helping out people because, like you said, the complete weather disaster in northern Italy right now, it's pretty crazy.
It really is. And before we get to the race in Monaco, I want to talk about Pierre Gasly from Alpine. And I didn't really know about this rule, but it seems to be kind of the technical foul rule in the NBA. If you hit X amount, you get suspended. And he was very close. I think he has 10 penalty points, and I think once you get 12 to 10 penalty points in a 12-month period, you have to miss a race. But he got something rescinded or something like that, so he's not going to get suspended. But I did not realize that for a series of minor crashes and things that you hear on race day, whose fault was it, this or that they have penalty points against them and they could actually be suspended.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not something that you hear a lot about on the broadcast because it doesn't happen very often. But yeah, he's gotten penalty points for collisions, speeding after red flags, being too far behind the safety car, exceeding track limits, all these things, etc. So something to look out for. I also love your pronunciation, incredibly American pronunciation of Alpine, which is
Alpine.
What the team's called, but you called it Alpine, which is how you would say it. No, it's fine. I mean, you were you're just in Colorado. I think of Alpine skiing.
Skiing, yeah. Right.
But it's
Alpine.
fine.
I'm sorry.
We are American.
That's my fault. And then, okay, so the race this week is in Monaco. And listen, Monaco is another one of those places. My God, I mean,
gorgeous.
I mean, if you're rich, you're lower middle class. You have to be super rich, right, to be over there. It's an unbelievable sight, everything that surrounds Monaco. But am I wrong to say, Jess, that the race is just freaking boring? There's just not enough areas to pass.
You're not wrong.
I get the whole Monaco thing, but man, I have a tough time getting into this race.
You're not wrong. I think it is a more boring race, but I think it is so visually stunning to watch them race through the streets of Monaco, which is this really old European town right on a cliffside. They go through this famous tunnel. There's people on their yachts, sailgating. Every celebrity is there. I mean, this is where half of the F1 drivers live in the off season for, personal reasons. Parentheses, tax reasons.
Yeah.
So this is a home race for a lot of drivers, especially Charles Leclerc, who's had awful luck in Monaco. So it'll be interesting to see if he can rebound from his bad luck the last couple seasons this weekend. But Sergio Perez won it last year, which was kind of an upset for him. So we'll be interested to see if he can win it again. But yeah, Red Bull's obviously the best car. So if they do well in qualifying, they will probably win. And that's just kind of how it goes in Monaco.
Am I wrong to say if I'm a spectator there and you mentioned the cool tunnel and everything, do you realize, if you're a spectator there and the cars are in the tunnel, you can't freaking see them?
Yeah, but if you're a spectator there, you're probably doing pretty well.
That's true.
So you're having fun on some mega yacht and drinking some really nice champagne. So
you're right.
Not a bad place to watch Formula One.
Maybe watching from your penthouse and looking down on the track, just like you're looking down on all the commoners down there.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, it's a really interesting, unique race. It is definitely one that fans have really polarizing opinions about, but regardless of the race itself, if you're a fan of the spectacle of Formula One, this is the race to watch.
Yeah, it seems like it's one of those where it's just kind of like Miami. You like to be seen to be there, Monaco to be there. Again, like you said, if you're there, things are going pretty well. All right, Jess, that's going to do it for the. I do have to say that I know when we're going to get together for my golf tournament, pickleball, my wife and I are becoming really, really good. So I don't know who you play with when you play partner pickleball, but
Lee is coming.
Yeah.
We will see you on the court.
We are thinking of in the future in the future for our Golic Family Foundation golf tournament to incorporate pickleball into the golf tournament.
I love that idea. I will lead the pickleballers while you and Gojo lead the golfers.
I may leave Gojo to the golf. I may join you on the pickleball course.
Sounds like a plan. I'm down.